This is not another stream. This is the moment we show up. Real talk, real truth, real people, ready to ride. No filter, no fluff, just raw conversation that hits where it matters. Welcome to the revolution of You Become You Live. Let's do it live in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Hit it! Hello, everyone. My name is William Rochelle, but you can call me Bill, and welcome back to You Be You Live. And let me just say, if you caught the last episode with my guest today, then you already know that we didn't just talk, we transformed. We dove headfirst into mythic identity, what it means to become the hero in your own story. We talked sacred rituals and even ayahuasca, which Scott shared with us his experience taking the plant medicine, walking through the fire, the ego death, the revelation, and the rebirth. We laughed about becoming influencers, and I'm still looking for it. Tom Ford, if you're out there, I think you should send me some free glasses. I'll wear a new pair every day. Love them. And Scott, I believe he was with Saddleback Leather. But we will confirm with him right now. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome S. Scott Mason.
Thank you. It is so good to be here, William Rochelle. You've made my day, and it is Vanson leather. Vanson. Don't forget that.
I'm so sorry. You know, I knew it was leather. You know,
yeah, it's definitely not plastic.
Okay, so let's get into it. Tell me real quick before we dive in. Well, you already did. Now, the last time we talked near the end of the show, we said that we said something that stuck with me, and let's talk about that, and let's focus next time. So what I want to do, because you've been awakened, once the fog lifts and your identity comes back into view, then comes a real change. That's kind of what you said.
Yes.
And then choosing one path.
Mm-hmm.
Am I right about that?
Yes. Choosing the path that's right for you, that you were meant to be here for. Absolutely.
Right. So we're talking about spiritual focus, business alignment, energy conservation. How do you define focus? And then let's get into it.
Focus is, to me, the acting upon the understanding that you've developed as to what your alignment is spiritually and as an expression of the divine here upon the earth. Some might give it a more secular definition. Focus is merely paying attention and acting on whatever it is that you're paying attention to. But that can often really be a high-intensity distraction rather than focus. I had that sort of focus on careers that took me away from my alignment, or at least were detours onto my ultimate journey. Focus, therefore, is really tied inextricably to divine alignment.
So can someone seem like they're focused on the outside and still be fragmented on the inside? I know the answer.
We both know the answer. I have a feeling you've been there as well as I have, right?
Yes. But I want you to kind of explain what that means, because I the answer is yes, right?
Yeah.
But I don't know how to express it. And then who are those people and how do they correct it? Or how do we correct it or help them correct it? So, you know, someone needs to want help to get help. But, you know, what does it look like? What does it mean?
I'll start with a personal story that will begin to perhaps unpack what that might look like as I move into a more general and abstract discussion of who these people are and what it looks like. So I was raised in backwoods, Kansas. I was smart. I was skinny. I was bookish. I had big glasses. I wore, and not stylish ones like yours. And right. Give the homie a shout out. And they certainly were not Tom Ford. They were more like local opticians, $3 special. And I had braces and all this sort of stuff. I was socially awkward and not good at team athletics. I was unhappy. I was miserable. I didn't fit in. I knew I wanted to get out. I knew from the time I was in 7th grade that I had a destiny. I knew that that destiny would be not like anyone else's around me, but I didn't know what it was. Nonetheless, I used my rational mind to pursue what seemed like the most reasonable escape route, going to college first and then to law school and then practicing law in an area that I at least found nominally interesting. A lot of the legal profession I found unbearably dull.
Right.
Once I was there, I began to pursue what were either socially conditioned or socially expected markers of achievement, or things that would in one way or another fulfill whatever ego-based needs I had. It might have been money, in my case, stature, power, authority, were huge deals. I remember I was a power lifter for many years. I went into the big and tall store because all of my suits were custom made. And he said, "What do you want your suit to be cut like?" And I said, "I want it to show power." That's what right. So like that sort of thing was what it was all about. When I work with clients, we talked last time about the role of Greek myths as a tool for understanding what's holding us back, what we can become. There are 5 toxic myths that I don't remember if I mentioned or not, but in one way or another during this period, I was living out all of these 5 toxic myths, which have corollaries within Greek myths and basically are warning signs, or they're internal narratives that you tell yourself that keep you misaligned. In terms of what it looked like, at first it was a perpetual sense of dissatisfaction. Nothing was good enough. No matter how much I achieved, no matter how much praise I got on anything, I was this endless vacuum or black hole of need for more, or whatever. So that's part of what someone could be. Over time, behaviors began to manifest themselves. I began to hear things like, "Scott, you're a real asshole," or "Scott, you're very aggressive," or
in your head or from people.
From people. Right? Or "Scott, you're intimidating," or "Scott, you really should read this book, The No Asshole Rule," or things like that. These sorts of negative, toxic behaviors that were manifestations of this inner need and this inner misalignment were, again, markers that I was someone who might need help. Sometimes in other situations, I've seen it play out as people being overly passive or overly burned out, or just being apathetic in whatever their situation is. Whatever it is, it's not a true engagement at the deepest level with whatever it is that you're doing. And it is not a demeanor or a way of dealing with others. It's reflective of joy and love. It's other emotions are in one way or another showing. Finally, physically over time, I began to manifest this misalignment. I had rosacea all over my face. My breath was bad. I started to get teeth that looked like garbage.
How did you know your breath was bad?
Making me embarrass myself. 2 instances. One time I was sitting at the head of a table of a meeting I was leading, and the woman who was sitting next to me, and I made sure I always sat at the head of that table. She was sitting next to me and I started to talk, and she like covered her face and turned away because my breath was so bad. And then another time my staff, females, gathered me they asked to have a private meeting and they asked me, "Scott, is there some way you could wear chew gum or take mints or something like that to deal with your breath? It's like we're standing in front of a dragon." So I kind of got the clue. Really, this was internal stuff manifesting physically. And then I began to have injuries and breakdowns and things like that, and rage and anger. What might you be feeling like, in a way, was captured by a moment I'll share with you. I had a 7 a.m. meeting in the middle of July, and I was wearing one of my kick-ass power custom-made suits to a meeting. And after it was over, I went before breakfast. I took the elevator down out of my office. I live in New York City, went to the nearest sidewalk, and as I was crossing the sidewalk to get to the deli where I'd get my eggs or whatever, I turned to my right, and I saw the man. I remember him to this day. He was Arab American, and he had one of those metal coffee carts that sits on a sidewalk side.
Mm-hmm.
And he was giving a woman who was in front of his coffee cart a 75-cent cup of coffee, and he was smiling the most bright, beaming smile. And I looked at him, and I felt,
Joy.
and I knew this was a lovely hatred.
Yeah.
Nothing.
Joy.
Yeah, he was having joy. And I was angry and jealous and furious. How dare you fucking be happy? What in the fuck is wrong with, excuse my language, all of this sort of stuff. I remember stamping on my way. If any of this, even one thing, resonates with you, you're actually not focused. I don't care how much time and effort you're putting into whatever it is you're doing. You're misaligned. You are actually just merely overly attentive to a series of distractions.
Okay. So through mythology, is there a way of narrowing that path? Is there a way of wandering it? Like,
yeah,
kind
absolutely.
of, do you have anything on that?
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about what myths were. I think we covered this a little bit, but we'll go into more depth right now for anyone that wasn't here. Myths, what a myth is, as not just the modern use of it. A myth is a lie, right? That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about things like Greek, Norse, other pagan myths. What these were, on the one hand, were literary creations. They were interesting stories. They were the subject of plays and art. They were fables, all of that sort of stuff. On a larger level, they were statements of social expectations, particularly with regards to individual behavior, leadership, and connection to the divine. They also were seen as views, or almost like telescopes, into a more ethereal, non-material reality that ultimately guides us. These stories, like I mentioned a few minutes ago, all were allegories, or all were external versions of the internal hopes, dreams, aspirations, expectations, and spiritual experiences of the individuals that made up the cultures that we later associated with the larger group of stories that we call mythology.
Right.
These stories, as varied as they are, and appear with different themes over and over, different genres, sort of like we have horror novels and romance novels today. There are different types of myths. There's no official canon of mythical types, but if you look at them, and as I've studied them over and over, you see some general types of stories appear over and over, like the journey home is the Odyssey, or the creation myth, or the escape from hell, or the descent to hell, a whole set of stories like this. What these are corollaries to internal personal narratives that we tell ourselves that can either keep us distracted or can move us forward. If we understand the narratives, the mythical genres that are keeping us stuck or distracted in the wrong direction, we claim the power to rewrite them. There are character types within myths that represent the personality characteristics that can lead you to destruction. We can get into those if you're interested. There are 3 character types that enable you to walk the journey away from a toxic myth, out of being a toxic character, and into the ultimate fate of the heroes in Greek myths, which is reunion with the divine, connection to who and what you are, on a spiritual and soul level, alignment and the genuine ability to focus. I've said a lot. Does all of that make sense, William?
First of all, I'm going to go back. This is an unscripted show. The last time we met, we knew nothing about each other.
Yes.
Because we had a discussion last time and we did know each other, I came up with a few bullet points I wanted to bring out to you.
Yep.
And you answered all of them already. One was, do you believe each one of us have one true path or can focus evolve? You just answered that.
Yes.
Yeah, you can walk out of it. You can walk towards it, walk out of it. You can, go wherever you want. And then the other one was, and this is my rapid fire question, with your gut response. When I say, what's the first word that comes to mind when I say distraction? What's the first word?
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, what is it?
Life.
That isn't that. Okay. That is a great response. Life is a distraction. If you're not focused inward, if you're not intentional with your purpose, and I'm going to let you lead, but if I wrote a song called, two songs. One's called Throw a Punch Kind of Day. And what it means is that you wake.
Wow.
Yeah, I'll send it to you.
Please keeping it real. I love that.
Yeah, because what it is you wake up and you're full of praise, you're full of glory. You're like, I'm going to kill it today. I'm going to enter into my divine purpose. And you walk outside, and all of a sudden, for no reason, the person behind you at Starbucks is like standing too close. I'm like, I can feel your breath on my neck. And then someone cut you off in traffic, and it's not one thing.
Yeah.
It's not one thing. So you always have to bring yourself back.
Yeah.
You always have to pull yourself back.
Yeah.
And some of us, most of us, some of us have the tools. You definitely have the tools. Others don't. That's when they're out there punching people in the throat. And then the other one is called strip away, which is, who are you without the followers, without the fame, without the title, without the compensation? And I think most of us don't know.
Isn't it sad?
Yeah. I think most of us, our lives are not built around our purpose. Our lives are built around our status, our what society thinks, and how many meetings they take a day. What's the biggest lie we believe about productivity versus focus?
Yeah. Right. Like all of those things really go as to the idea that how we define our physical existence and the markers that show progress or not are actually illusions or actively dangerous.
Yes.
Right? Like the idea that whatever you have as a job, if you don't have that job, well, then who are you and what are you? Right? People kill themselves because of that. And
I lost myself.
Yeah. And the fact of the matter is, right, you can feel aligned and you can feel like all sorts of wonderful things walking outside the door. And then right when you're about to record yet another podcast interview with your homie, Scott Mayer, the Myth Slayer, StreamYard starts acting up.
Yes.
And then the swearing starts and things are thrown across the room and you have that I want to punch the room sort of day. And by the way, what genre are these songs that you've written? Because they sound like they'd be some slam and disco songs, I've got to say.
So it's everything. I'll send you my Substack link. Well, we're going to talk afterwards. But I just take, so I've written all these articles, like 400 articles, and then I've gone through them and said, this is how I was feeling that day. Now I'm going to turn them into lyrics. Now I'm going to turn them into, create the instrumental version, the highs and the lows. And stuff. Anyway, we'll talk about that. But it's if we all sit and really think about how we're feeling in a moment, like really think about it.
Yeah.
And then why are we feeling this way?
Yeah.
It allows us to open our hearts and open our minds.
Yeah.
And so
sometimes there can also be real power. And again, back to the theme of life as a distraction, there can be a real power. And that's what meditation is about. That to some extent is what a sacred plant journey can be all about in the right set of circumstances, or at least in one set of right circumstances, having no thoughts at all.
Yeah.
No thoughts at all.
So I'm gonna point out one thing. You said bringing it back to the theme here. So I had basically gone on a distraction tour, and my friend Scott was like, "Nope, we're bringing it back to focus." So let's talk about the ayahuasca journey.
Mm-hmm.
You shared with me last time. You described the experience as in phases, right?
Mm-hmm.
Letting go, losing yourself, confronting fears, and somewhere in that, a release, clarity came.
That and beyond. Yes.
Yes. So did focus, well, you told me focus did not show up immediately after that ceremony. It took some time.
Yeah.
But do we need to purge before we can focus?
Interesting question. So just to be clear, and there's, by the way, when in saying this, I do want to use language very carefully here. And a lot of these terms are not familiar to people, and so they're just now going into the common parlance, and there can be confusion. It was psilocybin that I used. Magic mushrooms. I've never done an ayahuasca experience, although I plan to do that one day. So just, I don't mean to be all scoldy. I just don't want to.
No. But what's the difference between ayahuasca and psilocybin?
Yeah, thank you for asking. Good stuff. Psilocybin is a mushroom. And it is psilocybin experience. Well, psilocybin can be consumed through microdosing, little pieces of it that give you a sub hallucinogenic experience. They open that sort of experience opens up your heart. It makes you feel more emotional, more creative, more in touch. I did that as part of my larger psilocybin ceremony, but it was more of a predicate. Then there's a full psilocybin experience, which in my case and in many other cases, there is basically a stew that's put together into a chalice that you drink from after some rituals. And then that takes you on a journey. Ayahuasca and psilocybin, there are those that argue, I think, with some persuasiveness, particularly the extraordinarily well-known scientist and expert on the subject, Terence McKenna, whose book Food of the Gods is a must-read for anyone who is interested in the study of colonialism, prejudice, racism, religion, as well as sacred medicines, as well as the history of substances like sugar, coffee, and psychedelics themselves. You would argue that these are psilocybin mushrooms were deeply interconnected with the very emergence of consciousness as we know it within humanity. Ayahuasca is a vine that contains psychoactive substances in it that is again mixed with a variety of different other substances into a brew. It's mostly is historically been associated with South America. It is associated with quote unquote the divine feminine, and it is
divine feminine
as opposed to the divine masculine. We can get into a deeper explanation as to what it is, what those things are, and there is even some controversy about that. It is, by all accounts, a more intensive experience.
Okay.
And the journeys through both of them are profound and life-changing.
Okay. So I need a favor from you.
Yes.
Since you are the legal eagle here. Let's do a disclaimer that we are not supporting, nor are we able to suggest that. And I'll let you do the disclaimer.
Yeah, and I will say this right now. We are not making any suggestion or recommendation as to any behaviors. We're not endorsing anything that is illegal or outside of the bounds of the law. We're not endorsing any behaviors or any activities or any courses of treatment that we do not have expertise in before anyone who is watching this show has any inclination of using any substance for a course of mental health treatment, for spiritual or personal development, or any other purpose. We urge in the strongest possible terms that you work with a qualified medical or other professional, and under no circumstances are we endorsing any use of these substances for anyone who is a minor or otherwise mentally incapacitated.
There you go. Thank you for that. So I'm glad we had this conversation, because I didn't know the difference between ayahuasca and psilocybin. So even though you and I were having that conversation last time, you were saying psilocybin and I was hearing ayahuasca.
Yeah, it happens. That's understandable.
Yeah. So it's weird how our minds can hear things, but our ears can hear things, but our minds can interpret things.
Well, and that is a very interesting thing that occurred. And perhaps we should discuss that offline.
Go ahead. Oh, offline?
Yeah.
Okay, sure.
But I will say this. If you're hearing one thing, even when another thing is said, that's a signal that something much more deep needs to be explored, particularly internally, as to exactly why you're hearing whatever it is that you're hearing.
I think for that particular subject, it's because ayahuasca is what I've seen on the White Lotus, right? Or 9 different strangers. So I didn't know what the name of it was. I knew it was a drink that kind of took you out of where you were.
Yeah.
And then discussing it, I think ayahuasca kept coming up after our conversation. So I wasn't with our conversation. So then my mind did it. But are you telling me that I'm crazy?
No, what I'm saying is that, a lot of times things resonate with us or not for reasons. And that goes, and sometimes those things can be buried deep in our mind. Sometimes there are clear, obvious reasons, like you might have just described. Other times, looking beyond what those superficial reason-based explanations might be, it's worth also exploring, well, is there really something else? Why, out of all of the different words that I hear over and over and over again, and this isn't directed explicitly to you, this certain term is the one that keeps popping into my mind. I will say this, for instance, when I work with my clients, I tell them at some point or another, a deity will show themselves to you during this process.
A deity is a god.
A god.
Okay.
It will be a Greek or Roman one. Now, it doesn't have to be. If you're a Christian, for instance, it doesn't have to be that. If you are of a different faith tradition, I'm not saying that these deities are showing up as real things, and I'm not saying that you have to be on the lookout for a Greek or Roman deity, but so far it has happened to everyone. And some clients are like, okay, that's cool. I'm intrigued. This sounds fun. I wonder what'll show up. And then they roll with it. Others are resistant. They're like, well, yeah, what if I'm the one that it doesn't happen to? Or I don't believe that. Or I've never studied these deities. I know absolutely nothing about them. The only person who I know that knows anything about them is you, Scott. And I'm just working with you because I trust your abilities as a coach, not because I'm waiting for some deity to suddenly preoccupy my mind. Yet, no matter what internal orientation the client has, in one way or another, usually during a very specific period of time, during our work together, during the program that I have laid out, suddenly they wake up one day obsessed with a deity. In one case, it was a client who was obsessed with the name of a deity that she had never heard of in her life. And as a matter of fact, it was a deity I had never heard of in my life, ever. And she told me what this name was. I had to do some research about it. She did some research about it. And it actually turned out to be the exact deity that was going as to the foundations as to what she ultimately wanted to become. And this has happened on other occasions as well. So what I've learned from seeing that happen with individuals is that names become lodged in the subconscious. We think about them, they overwrite what we might have heard or what we might think we are prepared to hear or find within, or may seemingly pop out of nowhere. They're saying something every single time.
Okay. All right. Michael is saying that ayahuasca lasts, the effects last longer.
Yeah.
So when we're talking about effects, what does that mean?
So really, outside of certain circumstances, when you step into any sort of plant medicine or sacred medicine or psychedelic experience, generally you know when they begin, and you know when you're coming out of them, usually because, and I won't speak for everyone, but because you get a sense of that alternate world that's extraordinarily real to you and may look different. You may be hearing things, or things that you thought were normal sounds have been blocked away. All of those things sort of dissipate, and you are clearly back into a world that's dominated by the perceptions of the particularly the eyes and the ears, but also our other senses. So in my case, the psilocybin experience, there was I experienced a Greek myth. There was a very specific beginning. There was a little slight ramp up to it, but then boom, something happened in my line of vision. And I remember telling the facilitator I was with, I'm in. But then I also knew very clearly when I was out, and I removed the eye shades that I had over me during different points of my experience. I had gone up and gone to the bathroom or whatever. So it was very obvious that what I was experiencing now was the same world that I had been in before I even went to this facilitator's physical location, as opposed to when I was getting up and going to the bathroom and experiencing the world. It was a very different sort of thing. So that's how, I'm not an expert as to how long every single type of psychedelic experience lasts. And there are, of course, individual variances, and are they being used together, and in what combination, and all these other sorts of variants are out there. But suffice it to say, part of this goes as to why, particularly if you are new, but I would argue probably for anyone who's interested in safety, unless you're just at this, except in rare circumstances, you want to have someone sitting with you called a trip sitter, someone who is able to monitor this for you, who is able to help you determine that indeed you are in or out, and be able to process what's going on, so there's no confusion.
Got it.
Although in my case, there was no confusion at all.
Got it. Do you have any comments on Ronaldo's deity? Do you know who it is?
What is it? I am not able to see the comments.
Oh,
whatever reason.
Can't.
Oh, let me switch over here and see if I can see them here.
Well, I put them up on. It's on the screen.
Good.
Oh, so basically you're saying you can't. You need your glasses.
Odin and Zeus. I have a lot to say about that. It would be interesting, Ronaldo, to talk to you about that. Those are both warrior gods. They're both gods associated with the sky. They are both king gods, or manifestation of the inner sovereign. They're obviously associated with power. They are also usually associated with the ruling class. So if you were my client, we would have gone through a whole set of negative myths that you might have been telling yourselves, as well as identifying corollaries of positive myths. We would have been connecting that to your goals, and or at least your initially stated goals and objectives for your life, and then looking at, okay, where is there a gap between goal, internal myth, and reality, or future myth and vision? When something like Zeus or Odin comes up, we really want to dive deep into the iconography associated with those deities. Why are those deities in particular speaking to you? What are their qualities? And are they coming to you because of a preconceived egotistical desire, like I like power, I like control, so of course Zeus and Odin are going to be who speaks to me? Or are they more deeply connected to your soul? And if so, what is that saying? You may not, sometimes people might say, and I'm not saying Ronaldo is like this at all, it may be that they are someone who is shied away from really connecting to their inner power, or really fighting their monsters, or accessing their inner wisdom, choosing, let's say, to focus on, I don't know, gossip and social media controversies and all that sort of thing. Tapping into your inner power might be, and your inner wisdom might be reflected through Odin by thinking about, well, what sacrifices are you going to make? How are you going to change to step into that wisdom? How is that going to lead to an embracement of your power? And then what does the expression of that power look like? So it's highly individuated, but these sorts of things are the tools that I would begin to use to explore what this means. What about Zeus in particular strikes you? Is it the lightning bolt? Is it that he is in the center of the throne? Is it that he has multiple affairs? Is it that he has trouble with women? Is it that he has loyalty to his brother? Is it that he delegates anything? What about them speaks to you? These deities have a broad range of aspects, of qualities, of icons and motifs associated with them. What is it? Then let's unpack the meaning of that and pull that forward. When it comes to decision making down the road, once we confirmed that Odin and Zeus are the deities that speak to you, Ronaldo, when it comes to a difficult life decision, we would say, okay, in light of the qualities that Odin and Zeus have that represent your mission, your own connection to the divine, how are you going to make a decision about your life?
Excellent. I'm going to answer his next question. Then we're going to go back to being focused.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
So your question is, you be you. Is it a matter of age or stage? Can you be you while you are struggling with kids, marriage, professional growth, mortgages, etc.? You can be you when these are all behind you and you can focus more effectively. And I'm going to say that's one of the biggest problems that most of us have, is that we wait to be happy. We wait to be ourselves and our authentic selves, and consistently say, I'll be happy when. And that when never freaking comes, because my friend Scott just said, what's the biggest distraction? Life. So what you just described is life. So are we going to be our authentic selves once we're dead? Once we're 75? Like, when do you become the true you? And I will say this, you being you is not a bad thing, because you're also teaching your children to be authentic. You're teaching your children to put themselves as a priority in their lives. Otherwise, you're teaching your children to put themselves second or third or fourth in their own life, in their own journey. So really, it's an empty cup can't fill another.
Absolutely. And there's one thing I want to add to that, but before we do it, just so my mind doesn't get distracted by life, Michael said something important in the comments, which is with regards to women and working with a facilitator, right?
That.
Thank you. Obviously, what he was saying, for those who might not have seen this yet, is women need to be careful, because there have been some reported bad things that have happened to women during these experiences with male facilitators. I will even go a step beyond that and say, generally, working with a facilitator is something that you need to spend a lot of time and effort into thinking through carefully and interviewing, and not just going with anyone, because anyone who is going into one of these situations is vulnerable. You're more suggestible. You may be in a place of emotional turmoil. The person may or may not be competent. They may have put you in a setting that isn't good for you. They may not have had the appropriate experience to handle something should traumas resurface. All
Absolutely.
these sorts of things. So safety, 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 harm reduction, harm reduction, harm reduction. Work with someone who is qualified, who you trust, who you have interviewed, if you are doing it. And that's why we do not recommend anyone ever have one of these experiences without being with someone that they have vetted carefully, that is qualified, competent, and where you know what you're doing going in there. I just had to say that.
I appreciate that.
No, thank you. With regards to you being you, I do want to point out one other thing. If you are able to be you while you have these other things going on, you're going to be able to be more present and more able to manage them easily, right? Being misaligned is not going to make it easier to deal with a stressful job and a crazy boss and a difficult relationship and demanding children who may have their dysfunctions of their own. You may need to be you and connected in order to show up as an expression of divine love and radiance every day in order to keep your sanity. And you're right. As we, I think, talked about last time, look, I was not an old man when I suddenly came down with an illness one day that no one knows what it is to this day and almost killed me. And if I just waited until it was convenient for me to be me, as you just pointed, this thing could have killed me. No one knows what it was to this day. If I were not in such good physical shape, I was told, I likely would be dead. And so waiting forever is a fool's option. And I hate to be harsh that way. We need to be ourselves. Part of why we need to connect with ourselves and the divine is so we can navigate these things. It's not a matter of luxury, William Rochelle, or anyone else who's watching. It is a matter of making it through this life in the best way that you can and without
100. 100. You know, there's so many people that I know that given up their lives for specific reasons. And when I say giving up their lives, I mean they've devoted their entire life being a wife or a husband, or a parent, and you know the marriage dissolves, and they don't know who the hell they are. The kids leave, which they do, and they come and see Thanksgiving and Christmas, and you no longer know who you are. So you know these things, the being you, putting yourself first isn't an option. It's a necessity.
Yes.
And I will always fall back onto that. Always. My question now is, when you feel scattered, Scott, which I'm sure you do, we all do, what's your go-to ritual to return to center?
It's not really quite that simple, but I will answer the question in the best way that I can. Making sure that I have ever evolving spiritual self-centering practices that I engage with every day is the cornerstone. So for me, for instance, on my phone every morning, I send myself an automated text message demanding that I write down 3 things that I'm grateful for that I've never written anywhere else, right? And then I text myself right that back. That begins the day in one place. But really, I spend a lot of time usually at night, sometimes during the day, getting into a place where I am it may be through meditation, it may be through what I call devotions or affirmations or some sort of prayer, where I am literally getting on my knees, not as a matter of adherence to any specific religious faith's ritual. And I actually put something on my head. This is just a Scott Mason, but as a matter of showing humility. At the end of the day, I found blocks true connection with myself and the divine is when the ego gets in the way. And so reminding myself that the identity that is the physical that I have wrapped myself in for this life and am stepping into is something that is lesser and incomplete than the divine. Literally putting myself in a position of voluntary humility reminds me of the larger goal, which is to strip my ego away. Instead, again, the practice is ever evolving. I spend time focusing, talking through what it is that I'm struggling with. Is it fear? Is it resentment? Is it
Talking through with yourself,
talking through with myself, but myself being at one in the conversation with my version of the Great Spirit.
Got you.
And then I also will do things like some sort of manifestation, but making sure that these manifestations are manifestations not of my will or what I want, but what the divine will is. I will ask to be able to look at and interpret signs around me that might help me understand what that will is. I make commitments. And this one is a big one for me, at least, and for many of the clients that I work with. I make commitments to either offering up to the divinity or making sacrifices to the divinity of things that keep me disconnected. Fear is a big one. Ego is the most important one. Grievance, resentment, the tendency to look in the past. Those are all bad habits that I have. Even listening unnecessarily to gossip or trivial noise in the news are things that I will, that will keep me distracted from the divine. I literally make a commitment, an ongoing commitment today and every day for the rest of my life to literally put those things up in an altar to the Great Spirit, a metaphorical altar, and burn them away. What I seek to be is an expression of divine love, of divine radiance, a mirror of whatever it is, and also surrender myself to whatever the divine wants me to be. One thing that we didn't talk about earlier that goes as to the you be you later, I've got kids and a wife and stuff, is to understand that who you being you is ever evolving. So you being you today as an overwhelmed mom or dad might not be the same as you being you once the kids are grown up and gone. But you can't evolve if you never take the step in the first place. And so that's why a lot of this is evolving. Then by saying this, I personally advise my clients, and I do it myself, I say all of this stuff out loud. I do not say it in my internal mind. I do not say it as I'm drifting off to sleep. I say it out loud. That brings out our the social commitments, right? And that sort of social impact that we're trained to do. But then also it cements it, for me at least, more and more deeply in the subconscious. So going back to your practices, when I'm finding myself distracted, it's very easy for me after months and months of months saying over and over, Scott, you have sacrificed and you continually sacrifice XYZ. Observe that behavior or that mindset shift as a symptom of me not fulfilling my commitment. And then automatically after a while, I move away from it. I don't expect to be perfect. I make mistakes all the time, but that is a practice that helps keep me there.
That, first of all, that answer was fantastic.
Oh,
I loved it. I felt everything that you said.
Thank you.
And you, my friend, said, well, that's a pretty deep, there's a lot to go into that, but I'll give a brief overview. And you went deep. You went so deep. And I love it. And the last time we talked, you said distraction is often fear in disguise.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what do most of us, I guess fear is something that is built into how we were raised.
Yeah, it's an evolutionary necessity, obviously, too.
Yeah. Because I remember this. I remember I want to be I remember some of my friends were able to use profanity in the house when I was younger, and talk to their parents any way they wanted. And their parents would say, "Oh, little Eddie, don't do that. That's not good." If I was taught, you speak when spoken to as a child, right? And what I found, and I don't know the right answer, okay? So let's start there. But what I found was that I didn't have a voice until I was like in my 30s, because I would sit in meetings or in school and pray they wouldn't call on me because I wasn't taught to have a voice. You know, I was taught to be to honor my elders, which I think is great. To don't use certain words. And it's funny because I could, as kids, and I'm sure you did it too, we were cursing up a storm in Chicago. 8 years old, right? Outside, just like MF, blah, blah, blah. Your mama's so fat. In the house, I could put my hand in fire by accident, right? And go, gosh darn, it would never come out. I didn't know how. I wouldn't, because you would get slapped or spanked back in those days. So I was afraid of my voice.
So, William, what you've said, I have such unbelievable empathy for. That person was me. I want to take that into a slightly different direction, if I may, that will ultimately lead us back to the themes. Thank you. Before we go further, there was one other comment I saw that I just, again, feel the need to say, which is someone mentioned the importance of when you're looking for a facilitator or a shaman or anyone that you work with in a psychedelic context, you want to explore the extent to which integration occurs afterwards. Integration is a process that occurs after a psychedelic experience in which you discuss with someone who's competent, qualified, empathetic, all these sorts of things to help you begin to piece together the whole experience and draw meaning out of it and make sure that you're not, going off any sort of deep end. And so, yes, if the person that you're planning on working with has no plans around integration, or I would seriously you really do want to make the inquiry that person is discussing and make sure that integration is part of whatever work you're doing with.
Right.
So I do want to not let that one go because we're moving in a completely different direction. Let's talk about this not finding a voice. I feel such passion about this. Actually, William, I did a TEDx talk on this exact topic. It's literally about how Greek myths help you find your voice and become charismatic. I was exactly the same as you. My father was in the military and then he was in the highway patrol. It was a very regimented, militaristic household that we have. He was from the working class. We were not viewed as overlords. We were viewed as people who obeyed orders. My mother worked for a factory. It was not and they were African American in the rural Midwest. It was not a place. There could be physical danger from people out there that didn't have the most progressive views about African Americans if you were careless about how you spoke. And it was generally a more religious community anyway. And so all of these sorts of things led me to believe that, and not only that, but I had a high school teacher. Now, mind you, I'm half black, half white. I had a high school teacher tell I had a high school teacher tell my entire class about me, that you can teach a monkey how to speak, but you can't teach it how to think.
What?
Pretty racist. Yeah. And so
pretty racist.
Yeah, right. Just a little bit.
Just a little.
Right. And so feeling like you didn't have a voice, or that if I expressed that voice, I would be perceived as stupid or inferior, or all of these sorts of things, was something I really struggled with. And then it manifested itself as, again, back to the theme of alignment or not, pushing further and further away from my true self because I didn't know how to set boundaries within the work situations that I was in. In fact, sometimes it helped make me that monster that I described earlier, because by the time I had power and authority in which I could express my voice, because I'd never learned how to do it in any other way than, you're in trouble, Scott, bam, or you're a stupid idiot, Scott, boom, right? I just came out as hell on wheels, not anyone or anything capable of nuance with my expression. I mentioned the overall theme and the TEDx itself of Greek myths because this is a classic case of where if you look beneath the stories, in this case, the myth is one of the foundational ones of all of Greek mythology, the story of Orpheus and his beloved Eurydice, who Orpheus lost his wife Eurydice. She died suddenly. He had to go to the underworld, persuade the god of the underworld to bring her back to life. The god of the underworld said she can come back to life, but only so long as you don't look at her before you reach the land of the living. Of course, at the last minute, Orpheus did that, and then I will leave the rest of the story up to anyone who wants to read more about it or watch the TEDx talk. But suffice it to say, it literally is mapping out why people don't have their voice. What gives you your voice? What is truly having your voice and not? And the true power, once you understand who and what you are, of expressing your voice. When you connect to who and what you are, charisma comes naturally. At the top of the hour, you asked, how can someone tell if they're connected to themselves or not? Who are these people? I should have answered, in addition to everything that I said earlier, they are utterly and completely lacking charisma. Those that have that connection cannot help it. They will be charismatic. And I'm not talking about manufactured, performative charisma, being up there and acting dramatically on a stage. That's not true charisma. And as a matter of fact, the myth of Orpheus even explains that. But really manifesting as who and what you are cannot help but happen when you connect with itself. And that occurs because when you connect with yourself, have these distractions aside, the only voice, William Rochelle, that you have is your own.
Yep. That's why I'm like you, because I couldn't be. I was raised not to be. I was raised to be who they thought I should be, which is a completely different way than I raised my daughters. It's and I don't know about you and your parents, but it was a point in time. It was a different time, and I think as we know better, we do better.
Yeah.
So, they did the best they could with the knowledge that they had, with the tools that they had at the time, not understanding that not giving your child a voice limits them.
Yeah.
The interesting part about that is that we both, you more so than me, went on to do not so mediocre things.
I would say you've done a lot of very non-mediocre things, my friend.
Well,
your LinkedIn profile.
I didn't have actually I did one time in Bangkok. I got custom suits. But I wasn't a power lifter, and I did understand the seating at the head of the table.
Yeah,
I 100% get that, because that's a power move.
It is,
and I would always do that.
Yeah.
Until I owned my own company, and then it didn't matter to me who was at the head, and I would say, in this meeting, you're going to lead it. Yeah. And so whoever was leading the meeting would sit at the front of the table. I didn't need, as I evolved, I didn't need to make power moves, because I was already where I wanted to be.
And confident in it, sounds like.
Yes. Absolutely. I can share the light.
Yeah, exactly. One of my most embarrassing memories around that was I had a corner office once, and it had my desk by one set of windows, and there was a circular conference room, and we're having a meeting with my key managerial staff as well as some consultants. And one of the consultants was another male. I had A, because I was physically large, but also B, because I was the head of the entire division. I had a very big, luxurious chair. And I pulled the chair around to the circular table and then went out to get a cup of water or something. I came back and the male consultant was sitting there in my chair. And I'll never forget, I snapped my fingers and said, "You get out of that right now and you sit over." Da, 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 da. And of course he was embarrassed and he got up and I did that. It was one of those things where I felt like I had to make sure that this is stopped right now and that I'm asserted right up front and that there's no question. And if he's humiliated, well, all the better. Everyone will remember for next time. I was not coming from a place of confidence. I was coming from a place of defensiveness, of feeling insecure that people might misinterpret anything. If I had really had confidence, I would have just sat down wherever. It was still my meeting.
Yeah.
Come on. What was going through my head? It was pathetic.
Well, I can tell you what was going through your head. So I've been in situations before where as a minority, when people come in, especially people from the outside, look at the older white guy and start directing all their questions to that guy in the office.
That's true. Yes.
And I'm like, that's the customer service rep, right? Like, you could talk to him all you want, but I'm the, and I've learned to not even say anything.
Yeah.
To let them talk,
Mm-hmm.
And so sometimes it's because we're conditioned,
yeah,
especially where you grew up, as you grew up, and what that teacher told you. We're conditioned to say, "Oh no, I'm not a monkey. I am not someone who was taught anything. I am someone who creates. I am someone who owns, and I am someone who has gotten to this point, and I'm not going to let you strip that away from me."
Yeah.
But it takes a moment to evolve from here to here, because the pendulum, it swings, and then somewhere in the middle we find ourselves.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I love it.
I'm loving the conversation with you, by the way. I don't know how you're feeling about it. Are you okay?
Rolling in it, brother.
Okay, good. So kind of, I want to throw it to you. What do you want us to know?
I want us to know that in a place and time in cultural history in which a lot of these markers of identity are actually just distractions. You mentioned productivity specifically before. KPIs, salary numbers, number of garages attached to your house, the price tag associated with your country club or your vacation, what you're wearing, the size or location of your office. All of these very concrete material markers are being taken away from people left and right. Their educational pedigree, their job, their career identity. We have lived in an era in which those have become more and more dominant. And yet, as they've become more and more dominant, we are more and more at risk. The emergence of AI is exposing that. The response of, or the shift in governmental approaches to how people deal with career and jobs, where even a lot of careers like those in government that people just assumed were automatically safe because of civil service protections are ending with a chainsaw overnight. And by the way, I believe, I think I read recently that Sam Altman of OpenAI recently said, and someone I interviewed for another show mentioned this as well, that ChatGPT or large language models are being inserted into robots experimentally now, and they're doing reasoning and talking back and forth on their own. A lot more jobs may be on the block. That is the end game of the materialist KPI, what it is that you have, or the things that you accumulate model of identity. That's where it's headed to. There is another way. A lot of people are going to feel lost. The empirical materialist model first emerged in the West in reaction to and against the mythical way of thinking. Well, it's time for the mythical thinking to come back. Of course, technology and empiricism and materialism and materialist ways of being are never going to go away. And when it comes to things like healthcare advancements and air conditioning and things like Zoom and StreamYard, all of that, it's for the better. But we've suppressed one side of the human experience and the understanding of identity too far. The secret to surviving as someone who truly has something to be in a world in which all of the other things that you may have attached yourself to as a matter of identity are gone, is looking back and integrating what we rejected a couple of thousand years ago into our lives. And that's the locus of hope.
The locus of hope. That's deep, but I'm not that smart. So what is the locus of hope?
Locus of hope is that space where we can find it.
Okay. So you said something deep. I'm going to say something non-deep.
I like shallow sometimes too.
Yeah, that's who I am. So I agree with you. Everything you said about AI and technology, and we needed to find our purpose. Taking it out of a spiritual realm, how do we survive with the direction? Like, in order for us to survive right now, you need a job to get a paycheck, to buy food, and to buy a home. But if 90% of the jobs just go away, and even the legal profession right now, they're saying you could just type things into Chat GPT and it'll write you a legal response that you can send to the attorney. I don't know what's safe. Acting isn't safe. Music isn't safe. Art isn't safe. Customer service. I mean, we can just go. I mean, they're going to be picking our fruits.
People are falling in love with AI.
I love it.
Yeah, but I mean, literally falling in love.
I've seen that before, by the way.
Yeah.
You mean that your AI love interest?
Exactly.
You can download and it talks to you and tells you things you need to hear.
Yeah. And again, if these things can be incorporated into robots, then literally people may have physical spouses. And, it seems ridiculous and anything's possible.
That's maybe. So what you're saying is that we can be single souls attached to a automation. That's what I'm hearing.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not an expert that could express it in a way that's perfect and using all the appropriate language. That's really not my space.
Right.
But it is adjacent to the space in which I'm in which what I'm saying is that even where we are now, the need for an alternative way of understanding who and what we are in the world has arrived, and it's going to get worse. The only ones that can save us from oblivion is ourselves. Now, there are those that argue that AI will create all sorts of new jobs, and what jobs will look like in the future, the workforce will look like in the future is going to be different. And who am I to say whether they're right or wrong? But in any event, there's still a transitory position. And still, a lot of the ways people have historically identified themselves professionally will be gone. And there may be niches where, people, the society as a mass rejects AI art, rejects AI writing, rejects AI music, all of these things are possible. But nonetheless, there's no reason that I can think of why you would not want to make sure that no matter what happens in the new world that we're in, as well as what may be beyond that we can't fathom, having an understanding of who and what you are isn't going to be of benefit in order to not just survive, but live. Yeah, you can survive. Yeah, chickens in chicken coops survive. They're given their feed and they hatch their eggs and they never leave a cage and they die. We can be mentally, emotionally, spiritually that way. Okay, that's cool if that's your choice. But if you want to use this as an opportunity or find a way to live a life that has any purpose at all, that is having you as be anything other than a commodity or just waste that's sitting in a trash bin somewhere because you're not serving a function, then that's up to you.
Right.
And we need to be able to take that step or guide each other through that, because that's not easy.
It's not. I could talk to you for hours, but don't worry about it. I won't. How did you transition? Was it the illness that had you transition from being an attorney and going so hard to being more philosophical and mythological and spiritual?
No, it was a journey. I think it was, in my case, I began to feel a little bit before, at the end of the day, workplace, large organizational nightmares were what drove me into my first entrepreneurship journey, which was co-owner of a manufacturing company. And a lot of that was because I got sick of abusive bosses. I got sick of people getting promotions or having opportunities for things that had nothing to do with merit. I got sick of bosses, sometimes particularly in government, even at an executive level. Mediocrity is totally worshipped. Things like creativity or originality are viewed as very, very, very bad. If you're a technocrat, that's the ultimate thing that you could ever be. And so someone like me that's creative, that's visionary, there's no space for utilizing a lot of the skills that I have, like charisma or the ability to talk, all those sorts of things. It just was not the right fit. I was feeling constantly stifled. So I went into entrepreneurship. Later, and I was still a hardcore rationalistic, materialist, hostile to spirituality person, even well into that first part of the entrepreneurial journey. Then the call began to come to me, and it was a gradual evolution until I had the illness, and the next phase of my life began, whether I liked it or not.
Okay. Sometimes, we're pushed in a direction that changes our lives and we don't know why.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, you first, please.
I'm seeing Kenny going back and forth. I am definitely not mediocre, and some stuff around all of that, right? Worshiping mediocrity and stuff like that. A lot of what I feel is really pointing to something that is worth people who are watching this or listening to it, whether now or on the repeat, would consider, which is that if you inside know that you're that you know you're friggin' awesome, if you know that you've got something to offer, if you know that you're not being appreciated and that you can be bringing more, that itself is a sign that it's time to begin to start looking to be you. And when you talked about the illness and the universe pushing us, again, there were things beginning to push and pull me into a more spiritual direction that began to occur about 2.5 years before I got sick. I went with them, but I didn't fully embrace them. So the other thing that I would say to anyone is, if this pull starts to come and you don't want to have the universe force you in the painful and horrific way that I had to endure, and I would not wish that on anyone, no matter what, then it's best to consider at least diving deep into whatever that pull is that you're feeling inside, and leaning into that feeling of, I'm not mediocre. I am something more. What can I and should I do with it in order to be me?
Yes, absolutely. And there's a point where people, there's a point where so I can't generalize, I consider certain things, certain thoughts or certain patterns to be selfish until I recognized, I don't have to be a people pleaser. I don't have to, do things to make people like me, because they're going to either like me or they're not, for who I am, not what I do for them. And it is so hard. It's so hard for me to take it. I'm definitely someone that, I want a gift. I don't like receiving gifts. It makes me feel uncomfortable. Even going to dinner and things like that. I'll pay for everyone's dinner. Don't know why. I don't do it now because I ain't got no job. But but the me, the internal self, always, my lung, for some reason, my love language has always been gifting, paying it forward, as I would call it.
Are you asking for thoughts on that?
You can chime in. You can say something. You could tell me I'm crazy. I'm fine.
I'm not going to say you're crazy. I think you're anything but crazy. I will share my own perspective on that with regards to some similar issues that I have faced. And so you or anyone watching who may relate to what you said may gain something from that. First of all, when I mentioned earlier, as part of my spiritual practices, I sacrifice ego. Ego doesn't always have to be grandiose, selfish, taking, sucking the oxygen out of a room, being all overtly about me. Ego can be creating a perception of you being the center of attention or adding value to the world by what you give. And so when I give, understanding, thinking about why I'm giving, is it, as one of my favorite writers, David Hawkins, said, ego in rags, or is it genuinely giving, is something that I have to consider. And if in my case I'm behaving in a certain way that seems generous, or that is and it doesn't mean seems generous in terms of expecting something overtly in return, but seeming generous in terms of fulfilling an ego need. In other words, if my generosity is ego in rags, I've got to cut it. Then the other thing, and this is something I've struggled with recently, and so I don't even want to say this is something that is, I'm looking back in the distant past and saying, oh, I learned. This is something that's hard. There is, I believe, an ethical obligation that many of us have to receive. The universe, in my opinion, is always giving us opportunity, giving us support. Turning away the gifts of the universe has an ethical component that's not positive. Not only that, but if we cannot receive, we cannot have the resources in order to give from an ego-less place. I always, not always, but very often, as part of my devotions, manifest receipt of material abundance. Why? Because I'm determined to get my message out in the greatest, most expansive, broadest, and deepest way possible. And I can't do that if no one will invest money in my business, or if no one will book me to speak, or if I'm perceived as someone who will not take other people's help and support. Well, if you're not willing to take my help and support, Scott, then why should I help and support you? You can just tell your message right in a corner somewhere in your studio apartment, and then you'll get to feel like no one is helping you. And so the idea of I'm not able to receive, again, I'm not speaking for you, right? And you didn't ask me for my opinion about
No, go ahead.
as a matter of folks who might hear this and relate to it and my own struggles in life, it's often coming from a place that's actually quite destructive and a hidden version of egotism that keeps us from connecting to our highest purpose, our destiny, as well as the ability to help other people.
So what's the difference between feeling reluctant to receive versus me giving? And I will say this before you answer, sir.
Yeah.
Whenever I give without any intention of getting anything in return. And I've done things like I had a friend who couldn't get a car, and I, gave her $4,000 and then, co-signed for her car, so that she can get it. Never asked for it back. I wasn't like, here's $4,000 and this is how you're going to pay me back. I've always felt like my life has had excess, and money should not be anybody's worry. That's my belief. And so because money was never a problem for me, I felt as if me helping somebody else from getting their home foreclosed on, or getting evicted, or their car broke down so they can't get to work, why not do it? Because all it's I had so much discretionary income.
Yeah,
right?
and that's what I'm talking about. Egoless versus ego driven, right? If you're quiet, like everyone, I'm just gonna give an example. The 1960s, 70s, and early 80s singer Diana Ross had a reputation for being Diana Ross. Who was that, right, as being a narcissistic diva. But it came out after some people wrote biographies trashing her that, right, like one of the people who wrote a biography for her, Diana Ross, had secretly paid off all the money that this person needed in order to live in a home, right, when she didn't have enough money to pay the mortgage. And she had done this or that sort of thing quietly. I'm not saying Diana Ross is perfect or anything like that. I don't know Diana Ross, and she certainly don't know or care about me.
She's listening right now.
What'd you say?
She's listening right now.
I'm glad to hear that. Diana Ross, you've got me upside down. But in any event, right, it's one of those things where only you really know your motives. And I'm not saying your motives are one or the other. And that's why I say, this isn't really directed to you, because exploration, discussion, conversation, honesty within ourselves and with those that we really trust is core to really drawing any conclusions about what I'm saying. These are things to consider. But sometimes people are giving, they might say, and I'm not saying all the time, sometimes it really is, it's my purpose, is my desire to pass my message on. That's giving to people.
Right.
It's my desire to help people and be of service to others. That's giving. I don't think anyone would reasonably say that's coming from a place of ego. I certainly hope not. But there can be a situation in which people like to give. There usually is some sort of acknowledgement, or a time they hold it over your head or something like that, where it's exposed as ego and rags, or I am the suffering martyr. I've given, and no one gives me back, right? Like that's an example of ego and rags. Look how much I'm poor and suffering while all those people that I help leave me behind. Ego and giving and rags. But then if it's in any way correlated to I have problems receiving, again, what is that about? Why is that correlation there? And so I think that this is, I'm not saying with you in any one case or another what it might or might be, but the exploration is worth taking into, as is the exploration as to why is receiving hard. Receiving could be hard for me. I'll speak for Scott Mason. Receiving can be hard because it makes me, in my eyes, appear to the world needy or weak or in desperation. In other words, the refusal to receive is a manifestation of ego and something destructive.
I can feel that.
Yeah.
Definitely feel that. This has been a very, very unexpected, great conversation. Not unexpected because I didn't think that you and I would have a great conversation. It's just, in speaking with you, there's so many layers that we go through.
Isn't it
Um,
beautiful?
I'm sorry.
Isn't it beautiful?
It is. It is. And one of the purposes of UBU Live is to make friendships and have open discussions and talk beyond the surface.
Yeah.
And that's what we do. And you and I think we need to do it again.
Yeah.
Definitely. Um, but I also think we're connecting. We're not just
Yeah.
we're not just having a conversation that's scripted, and we've run around a bunch of different things, even though the topic was supposed to be focus.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, I need to learn how to focus, especially as a host, because I'll get on one of the comments, and then that will take my mind to, you know, that's a really great topic right there. So what do you think, Scott? And so that's how the conversation kind of flows.
Yeah.
But we're including the people in the audience
Mm.
as we're talking about this. Um, I asked you before, is there anything that you want to say or get off your chest? Um, you did say something.
I do.
Scott, you already know when you speak, it's not just wisdom. It's like you're reminding us of something.
Mhm.
Our soul already knows.
It does.
You're reminding us of something that our soul already knows. And for
Mhm.
everyone watching, I hope today stirred something in you that provides clarity, awakening, focus, or devotion. Hopefully, all three. Um, See, this is what I mean by squirrel. So Americo jumps on and says, "Bill, you're too funny. Focus." So then, in the middle of me, in the middle of me trying to be all like Mr. Talk Show host, I'm like, "Oh, what did Americo just say?" Um,
But, I've got to say too, there is the argument that there's no such thing as a real distraction in a conversation, that everything we ever say in a conversation ultimately always is going back to the main course of it. It's just like in what way and why and how.
yes, yes. Does anyone have any questions for Mr. S. Scott Mason before we close out? We have been on an hour and a half. I can go as long as he can, but I think we're going to start wrapping it up, if that's good with you, my friend.
Whatever works with you, my friend.
Okay. So if anyone has any questions right now, speak now or forever hold your peace. And if someone wants to come on, jump on, I will send you a link. So let me know. This has been great.
It has been.
This has
Thank you.
been really, really great. You and I are going to talk after the show.
Good.
I think I'm going to close out now because no one said that they want to come up. I do have to use the restroom really bad.
On the subject of keeping it real.
Hey, UBU Live, keep it real.
Hey, I'm me.
And that's the only reason when I start wrapping it up, because it's when I have to go like use the toilet. So final thoughts.
Kenny Dunner was here. I've got to say hi to Kenny. He's one of my favorite people on all of LinkedIn. So I'm just so happy that he's here. It's good to meet the other folks that showed up today. And I just really want to say thank you for having me. You're an incredible conversationalist. You're an incredible host. And I love the connection that we're making. Yes, you. Me.
Thank you.
Diana Ross was once seen walking down a runway in a gown with a tiara on, getting an award. And I heard the story goes, she said, me, little old me. William, you, little old you.
We could talk about Diana Ross forever. She, to me, did what she had to do. Those when she left the Supremes, those groups were dying out, and she became the biggest star in that era in the Black community and beyond. But what was interesting, and this I want to say to everyone, what was interesting about it, and I don't know if you remember this or not, but there was a point where her she was always an icon. She's never stopped being an icon.
Yeah.
But there was a point where her sales were down, and she got a DUI.
Yeah.
She got arrested coming through London. It was all this, and it was all the same period. It was all the same. Do you know who I am? I'm Diana Ross, and it wasn't. When I look at that, I don't see her being diva-ish. I see her not understanding how to deal with not being at the level that she was at. And every single artist, and I'm going to say, and no one yell at me, every single female artist has a period where they go from being, the sexy diva to, all right, you're next. Here's the new one.
Yeah.
Right? And like Beyonce is the new one, but she's grooming Blue Ivy to take her place. If you ever watch any of the videos, Janet Jackson had her. Janet Jackson should be the biggest star, and the Super Bowl, those people subverted all of her music after the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
And it was the man that kept her down, because there were two people in the incident, right? A man and a woman. And the one that pulled off, his star rose.
Yeah.
And she said, you can't come to the Grammys.
Look, on the subject of female divas, it should have been more, and we're totally gypped. And on the subject, right, of Diana Ross, even her main rival, Donna Summer. Look at what happened. Disco. What was that all about? And her entire career was affected because of that. Had nothing to do with her talent or her ability. But what was that? That was talk about the man.
Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah. I wish Kelly Rowland would do her story. I wish, because if you look at Kelly Rowland and you look at Donna Summer, you're gonna see, like, okay, I could see how she could portray her.
I love Kelly Rowland.
I do too. She was actually my favorite one in Destiny's Child.
Oh yeah, definitely.
I always felt like Beyonce she wasn't good speaking in interviews. She's a great entertainer, but early on, Kelly was more eloquent.
Yeah.
And a stronger speaker.
And better in front of, like, you would see in some of the early concerts, she'd be the one that would get up there and rev the crowd up, right? Like, she was a really good hype person. And let me tell you, she was a good disco diva too. When she had that song with David Guetta, that was the jam.
Did you notice? Well, you probably didn't, but I was watching the Kamala Harris rally.
No, I didn't.
And in the rally, it's super cute because Kelly Rowland walks out first, holding Beyonce's hand, as if she is supporting her little sister that is afraid to come out on stage. So you could tell Kelly is like the big, I think she's strong. I think she's super strong, but you know what? We are way off topic, and I still got to use the restroom. So everybody out there, I will be live with Lanier Johnston on Tuesday.
Yeah.
We are going to do a before and after on a someone's profile that I found that was looking for a job, and I said, okay, would you be willing to? And so this guy submitted all of his stuff to Lanier, and we're going to take a look at it before, and then we're going to take a look at it after. And then we're going to talk, in a few weeks about how he's feeling about the results. So that's a good one to watch, because you're going to see what a good LinkedIn profile looks like. You're going to see the difference. And I'm not going to say the person has a bad LinkedIn profile, because that's not what I'm saying. But we're going to see, once Lanier touches it, how it shifts. And then Kenneth Dunner, And then after that, see, bye, y'all. Watch Tuesday at 4 o'clock. Me and Lanier Johnston and our makeover. I want to thank you, S. Scott Mason, for being such a fantastic guest. Every time you kill it. I also want to mention Kenneth, Jeremy, Peter, Americo, who is my new best friend, Jay Pasqua. Haven't met you, but I hope to soon. Meryl Cass, Spencer Collins, my good friend Michael LeBlanc, Sherilyn, Ronaldo, who we actually had a couple of conversations with, Lark Ambrose, Sherilyn Sherian. As you get to a certain age, you need the glasses more. And let's see. I just want to make sure everyone gets a shout out. I think we hit everybody. So Jeremy Burdick, Peter, we talked about, Lark, Kenneth, Michael LeBlanc. Yeah, I think we got everybody. I thank everyone for showing up, showing out. David Berchowicz, I appreciate you coming. And everyone, let's all connect with David Berchowicz, because I'm not sure who he is, but he joined us, and I'm so excited about that I want to make sure that he gets the love that he deserves. Yeah. So we are a community here on LinkedIn, especially the live broadcast supporters, and we need to welcome in the ones that aren't always on our shows. Talk to you guys later. Love everybody out there. Bye. Oh, watch my outro.